It started on a Wednesday morning, the kind of day that seemed destined to fade into the background. Nathan woke up with a strange tightness in his chest, a heaviness pressing on him even before he opened his eyes. The soft beeping of his alarm clock blended with the morning light filtering through the curtains, but today felt different. As he lay there, staring up at the ceiling, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. He tried to brush it off as work stress. Nathan's job as a marketing manager was demanding, and the pressure had been mounting for weeks. Deadlines, client calls, and endless emails had become the rhythm of his life. But this was different. The weight in his chest wasn't the usual anxiety. It felt deeper, like something shifting inside him, although he couldn't explain why. He went through the motions of his morning routine, coffee, shower, suit, but everything felt slightly off. The world around him, once so familiar, seemed distant, like it was covered by an invisible fog. He couldn't put his finger on it, but the unsettling feeling followed him out the door. As Nathan drove to work, the city seemed quieter than usual. The streets, typically filled with the noise of morning traffic, were strangely still. The air felt heavy, thick with a silence that made him uncomfortable. He rolled down his window, hoping for some relief, but the quiet persisted. No cars honked, no footsteps echoed on the pavement. At a red light, Nathan glanced at the sidewalk and saw something odd. An older man, dressed in a worn-out brown coat, was leaning against a lamppost, staring directly at him. The man's gray hair was wild, but it was his eyes that caught Nathan's attention. They were sharp, almost too sharp, and they seemed to look straight into Nathan's soul. For a moment, Nathan couldn't move. His hands gripped the steering wheel, his foot frozen above the gas pedal. The old man's eyes held him there, like he was waiting for something. The light turned green, but Nathan didn't notice. A car behind him honked, snapping him back to reality. He hit the gas, driving away, but the man's gaze lingered in his mind, unsettling him. All day at work, the feeling of unease clung to Nathan like a shadow. He went through his usual tasks, meetings, emails, presentations, but his mind kept drifting back to the man at the lamppost. Who was he? Why had he been staring so intently? And why did Nathan feel like it meant something? That night, sleep came in fitful waves. When Nathan finally drifted off, his dreams were filled with strange images. He was walking through a dense forest, the trees towering above him, their branches tangled and blocking out the sky. A thick mist swirled around his feet, and the ground was soft, almost spongy. In the distance, he heard a voice calling his name. Nathan. The voice was familiar, but he couldn't place it. He tried to follow it, pushing through the trees, but the voice kept fading, slipping deeper into the mist. He emerged into a clearing, where a small, dark cave sat at the edge of the forest. The voice came from inside, but something about the cave felt wrong. The air around it was heavy, almost suffocating, but Nathan felt drawn to it. As he stepped toward the cave's entrance, the voice stopped, and he woke up. His heart pounded in his chest, his skin damp with sweat. The dream had felt so real, the pull of the cave so strong, but now, in the stillness of his bedroom, it seemed distant, like a fading memory. Yet, the unease remained, and Nathan knew it wasn't just a dream. It was a message, a call to look deeper into himself. The next day, Nathan called in sick. He wasn't sick, not physically, but he needed space, time to figure out what was happening inside him. He spent the day walking through the city, lost in thought. The memory of the dream lingered, but more than that, he felt a strange pull inside him, like his soul was urging him to go deeper. Days passed, and Nathan withdrew from the world. He stopped going to work, stopped answering his phone. Instead, he spent long hours in silence, reflecting on his life, his choices, the things he had buried deep inside himself. Memories surfaced, regrets, old wounds, dreams he had let die. He began to see himself more clearly, recognizing the fears and insecurities that had shaped his life. He saw how he had built walls around his heart, keeping people at a distance to protect himself from being hurt. He saw how he had avoided confronting his past, afraid of what he might find. And he saw how, in doing so, he had lost touch with who he truly was. The more he reflected, the more he realized how much of his life had been driven by fear, fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of facing the truth. As Nathan journeyed deeper into the recesses of his soul, something remarkable began to happen. The world around him started to change. At first, it was subtle. The barista at his local coffee shop, who had always been indifferent, started greeting him with a smile. His co-workers, who usually kept their distance, began engaging with him more warmly, asking about his well-being. Even his estranged sister called him out of the blue, apologizing for their last argument. Nathan was taken aback. It was as though the changes he was making inside were radiating outward, transforming the world around him. The more he worked on himself, the more his relationships seemed to improve. People were drawn to him in ways they hadn't been before, and connections that had once felt strained became deeper and more authentic. One evening, as the sun set, Nathan sat on his porch, watching the sky turn from orange to deep purple. The air was warm, the breeze gentle, and for the first time in a long time, he felt at peace. The tightness in his chest had faded, replaced by a sense of calm and clarity. And in that moment, Nathan understood something he had never realized before. You can't journey deep within yourself, uncover your truths, face your fears, and make peace with your past, without changing the world around you. The outside world, he realized, wasn't something separate from him. It was a reflection of the energy he carried within. His thoughts, actions, and emotions shaped the reality around him in ways he hadn't noticed before. When he changed inside, the world outside responded in kind. As Nathan sat there, watching the last light of the day disappear, he knew that his journey wasn't over. There would always be more to uncover, more to learn about himself. But now, he wasn't afraid. He understood that the journey inward was the key to transforming not just himself, but everything around him. The world was no longer just a place he moved through, it was a mirror, reflecting the man he was becoming. And for the first time, Nathan felt truly free, free to live fully, to connect deeply, and to create a world that reflected the peace and clarity he had found within himself.